Superheaven are back with a brand new self-titled album after a massive smash hit that's gone viral on TikTok, on the internet, everywhere, with Youngest Daughter, a whole new project.
This is their first album in 10 years, which is a decade, and that's a crazy amount of time to be gone out of the game. But the album itself is only 10 songs long and comes in just over 30 minutes in length, so it's shorter than I think a lot of people would have expected. But we're going to find out if it still is exactly what we expect from Superheaven, and we go into the first track, which is Humans for Toys. What did you think?
I must admit, I've not really listened to this band a whole lot other than one or two tracks before, which is strange because it's kind of in our genre of the music we would usually listen to. But straight from the get-go, it's heavy, dingy guitar riffs. And do you know, instantly, as soon as I started listening to this track, I was like, oh, I'm in for a treat here. It was dark, but still melodic at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they kind of stayed in the realm of songs that they've had in the past, and the discography just has kind of carried on. So even though they've had this 10-year hiatus, I don't know if you call it a hiatus, they had a 10-year break from new music. They came back with exactly the same sound, what fans would have expected. Some artists might have, gone away from their original sound. This was bang on exactly what you wanted. And I really liked in the intro, there was kind of like a blood flow sound that kind of like really introduced the album, and it let you know what you're in for. It all kicks in, it gets really good. And it opened the door to let you know that this project is going to be in that realm of shoegazy, alternative rock style.
In this track, there was a few moments where you just heard in the background a little bit of a higher pitched guitar riff, which kept catching my attention. And then it also felt like, despite it being kind of the same energy throughout, just the odd little moments where an instrument would fall out and come back in did keep it interesting. But should we move on to the second track in the album, which is Numb to What Is Real?
The little drums on their own with the vocals in the intro was fantastic. I really liked that. I think the vocalist has got a fantastic voice. And throughout this album, I'm going to mention the drums a lot because I thought that was a standout part.
I'll definitely do the same. However, on this second track, in comparison to the first, I think the vocals were a lot better. Well, not particularly better, but concentrated on more in the mix or how they produced the songs. But even, again, straight from the first four notes, it was just like four heavy notes to kick us off. And I don't know what it was. It just really tickled my fancy so far. And to be honest, I would say that this second track is probably my favourite on the album.
Yeah, it's definitely up the rankings for me. I really enjoyed it. And once all the instruments join in, it sounds so large. They managed to achieve this sound throughout the album where it just kind of, it builds up to something, and without doing too much, it still manages to sound like this massive sound. And I think it's great. I think they've mastered the art of shoegaze.
And before we go into the third track, if you are a rock music fan, a shoegaze fan, pop punk, whatever you want to call yourself, please do remember to hit like and subscribe. But Tim, the third track is Cruel Times.
Some more phenomenal guitar work out the gate here, and I really liked the vocal melody that was on the chorus of this track. And again, I think that's something that stands out, is that the vocalist is great at coming up with melodies. Throughout this album, every track has a different vocal melody that sounds really good. And I think it is quite difficult for artists to actually nail a certain sound or to be able to come up with something that's catchy. But they've managed to do it on all 10 songs, in my opinion.
For me, this track really broke it down well in the last 30 seconds. It became a little bit more energetic. All the instruments got a minute to shine there. But in comparison to the first two, I think whilst still remaining dark, there was a little bit of light seeping through in this. It wasn't particularly a lighter track overall, but just enough where it changed the feel of the track.
Yeah, it's more a feel-good track than anything that Superheaven have released in the past, really, to my knowledge. So that was interesting to see them try a slightly different style, whilst, like you're saying, manage to maintain the roots of their sound. I think they managed to work that really well.
And then the next track, Sounds of Goodbyes. Again, the introduction was so cool. Just the guitar notes with a kind of whammy-esque reverb.
It was the bends in between. I've got that noted there. That sounded so good.
To introduce a track, they do this throughout where the start is really good and the end is really good. And then maybe one slight complaint is the middle kind of sections of a lot of the songs do kind of blend together. It's a very similar sound. But because I'm a huge fan of that sound, I don't have any issues with it. But especially in this track, there was some more overpowering, reaching vocals, which I really liked.
This really let you know how good of a vocalist he is. This really put his skills on to show. And I think that is the take home from this track, is that vocalist, good. That's the take home. We move off that onto Long Gone, which had a cool kind of ethereal intro leading into some cool drums. I enjoyed it.
I thought that this, in the entire album, was probably the track that strayed furthest from the path, if that makes sense. As in, it sounded very different, really cool, reverbed, echoey guitar coming in moments. I don't have a huge amount to say about it because it is similar to the rest in some ways, but I do like the fact that they've managed to make a few slight tweaks and just change it up a bit. Whereas if you come into this album for this band, for Shoegaze, you're still going to appreciate this track, but it offers something different.
Yeah, once the ethereal intro goes, we're hit by these massive distorted guitars. It sounds fantastic. They're carrying this melody through. But then around 50 seconds in, it drops out to just drums and bass, but the bass is still carrying the melody over. And I was really surprised by that, because usually the bass is doing something different to what the guitar's doing. But in this, they decided to let it kind of bleed through into the bass line. And I thought it was just a cool little addition to the track. It really added a cherry on top.
And we're up next with Hothead, which was a very short track, very short, to the point, quick tempo to start things off. Again, a little bit of energy injected. I think it probably needed that. Just easy little track.
That's exactly what I've got here. It's nice injection of some energy. Perfect length for such an upbeat track. I think if they lingered on it for too long, it'd be too much veering away from what we'd expect from Superheaven. So I think it was perfect.
But then from the up-tempo, we went into Conflicted Mood up next, which instantly felt, just from the way that they changed the sound, like it was going to be a more emotion-driven kind of vocal focus song, but it was really short again.
Yeah, and the title of Conflicted Mood is kind of what happened, because we had the really high-tempo, upbeat, not really happy, but, more energetic track previously. And then in a conflicted mood, we were hit by this more serene, calm track. And again, I just love how large this track sounds. They've really managed to make this giant noise with not too many members as a whole. And again, vocals absolutely fantastic.
Up next is Stare at the Void. I'd say between tracks, that was the best transition we got on the album. From Conflicted Mood to Stare at the Void. The way it just goes in and then hits us again with the energy was incredible.
I didn't even realise that the track had changed when this happened.
Because Conflicted Mood is so short, I thought it was just carrying on. And then I looked down, I was like, oh, no, this is something completely different.
Yeah, and I think that worked really well. I think they managed to transition it nicely. I think this album has been crafted really well in terms of how the songs play into each other. I think they all sit in the right place in the track list. And it does kind of feel like a two-parter song, and I know some artists do that. So I feel like if you were to listen to Conflicted Mood, you would have to follow it up with Stare at the Void.
Yeah, and I really liked in Stare at the Void how the kind of drawn-out vocals matched the breakdowns of the instrumental that were happening throughout in the background. And I'd kind of say after the last two songs that were so different and maybe a little bit anxiety-building, this felt like, for the band, a little bit of a release of emotion in this track. And maybe this would be one of the highlights for me on the album as well. But Tim, we're on to some of the last tracks now. What's up next?
It's Next Time. That's what's up next. And this feels very different to the rest of the album right off the bat. Something about it was, I don't even know what the term is. I want to say spacey. I want to say ethereal again, but on a different type of ethereal. It's very difficult for me to put together how I felt about this track. I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong. But there was just something about the guitar tones, the droniness of them, and just something really drew me to this track.
Yeah, I think it was the way the guitar notes, it was kind of a nice little progression that just continued throughout the whole song. And maybe they tweaked it slightly, changed it a little bit. But for me, this track kind of just went back to the overall feel that we had for maybe the first five. It was like, all right, we're back to Superheaven now. We're back with the boys. Really liked it again. And then at about 2 minutes and 30 seconds in, they kind of drew a few elements out one by one and then hit us again with a bit more energy. Honestly, the start and ending of a lot of these tracks is quite special, actually, especially for a shoegaze band. I know the genre has massively blown up in the last couple of years, and these are one of the reasons for it. And obviously, they were on a hiatus. I'm sure that their music blowing up made them go, oh, we're finally getting the recognition we deserve. And from this album, I can see why. And I think this album's going to do really well. But before I give too many thoughts, we're on to The Curtain.
The Curtain, which is the final track of the album. aptly named The Curtain as it's closing off the album. And I think this did a really good job of closing the album. Really great feels throughout, and you kind of get lost in the vocals and the guitars on this. They complement each other really well. The different melodies that they're both carrying kind of intertwine, and it makes for this really nice listening experience.
I don't know why this felt slightly theatrical to me because of it felt like it was missing a beat, you know, in the drums, where it was a bit more drawn out than previous tracks, because the drumming has been fantastic. But on this one, it was way slower, way more drawn out. It reminded me of something you'd see in a theatre performance. But then there was still moments throughout the song where it built up to very short bursts of energy and then kind of took us back to what in my head was that more performance style rock.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because it's called The Curtain. And in a theatre play, you've got the curtain that ends the show. So this whole album could have been put together as that kind of thought process. But there was a line said throughout it, which was, "I don't want to waste your time." And I really don't think they wasted my time listening to this album, because it was so short and succinct. But let's move on to our overall album thoughts before I gab too much about the length of the album. What did you think?
I mean, I didn't have many expectations coming into this, to be honest, but I was very pleasantly surprised. I think the short runtime does it well. If it was maybe another 4 or 5 songs long with similar sounds, I'd be saying, well, it probably all sounded a little bit too similar. But because it's a quick half an hour, if I want some shoegaze in my life, this is where I'm going to go. And it's where I'd send other people as well, because it's a fantastic way to portray the genre, where it's not just basic. There's cool sounds coming in and out, great guitar solos and great drum work.
Yeah, it's like a real love letter to their fan base as well, because, like I say, they've had this massive gap in their discography, but they've come back and they've not really changed up the sound that much. They still managed to capture the energy that they had when they first appeared on the scene. And I think they've done a really good job. And I think it really adds a great album to their discography. I think this is going to go down as quite a successful album for them.
Well, to say they've not made music for 10 years and the genre is much more popular than it was back then when they were releasing shoegaze, this could actually propel them to a new height. Obviously, they're already quite a big band, but I think a lot of people that maybe aren't particularly into that genre have probably heard 1 or 2 of the tracks, just the ones that have trended. I think if they listen to this album, they're going to go listen to the back catalogue and find a band that they really like.
Contrary to what you were saying previously, though, my only gripe with it would be that I would have liked it to be a tiny bit longer. I think maybe an extra 5 or 10 minutes on the runtime, and maybe like just a longer track in the first half, because the second half had some great tracks, some standout tracks that were maybe running up to 4 minutes runtime. The first half kind of felt like it was very, let's get through it, which wasn't detrimental. I liked how the album flowed. Just for me personally, I would have liked a little bit more. But this is definitely a band I would adore to see live. And I'm hoping I can catch them at Outbreak this year in the UK, as I think that's their only UK appearance this year.
Yeah, kind of on what you were saying there, The Curtain, the last track, had a bit more of that grand feel where it seems like they'd really mastered loads of different sounds and instruments. I think they could have explored that a little bit more, maybe with an extra track or 2. But overall, I am very happy. Tim, what would you rate this album out of 10?
My rating for this album is 7.5 out of 10. A very, very strong 7.5. Could potentially push up to an 8 after my 3rd or 4th listen. After the 2 I've done, 7.5.
I'm very close to you. I'm coming in at a 7. I think, as you say, because it's half an hour, very good for that half an hour. Really like the album, but there's not a whole load of content and themes explored where I can really say, oh yeah, it's 9, 10 out of 10. Think it's a 7. Think it's great. Really enjoyed it.
And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. We review all sorts of albums from all genres, all kinds of artists, new ones, old ones, the best ones, the worst ones. Check them out.
Also, leave your ranking out of 10 for this album in the comments. Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much.